And welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Pulse of Fins Nation. I'm your host, Louis Sung. Ron Caniff is not here today. He is dealing with some issues, so everybody give him some well wishes in the comments. We'd really appreciate that. However, I am joined by Chris the Duke Early. I'm going to just go ahead and call everybody calls him Duke if he's a friend. So everybody make friends with Duke because he's a really cool guy. How you doing, Duke?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing better. better. After Sunday. Listen, this was something that Ron was telling me during the post-game show, is that after a few days, you'll feel better and you won't be so melodramatic about everything. Listen, I'm not melodramatic. I am feeling better, yes, because emotionally speaking. But as far as my concern for this team, the concern is still the same as far as I'm concerned. I'm still very concerned about the Miami Dolphins defense. I don't know if maybe you have words that you would like to share with us. We will get into that a little bit as we get into the show. But of course, before that, really quick, just need to mention that as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. It's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less in their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos. Like today, there are still some tacos available for you to use if you are interested. And they also have Flex Friday specials where you get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Get the promo code 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, Duke. So obviously, I am like you weren't in the post-game show, so I'll go ahead and I'll just briefly talk about what my thoughts were back then, because I am looking at Vic Fangio with a very severe case of skepticism all of a sudden. Because this man, I keep saying this man was supposed to be the godfather of defense, right? The NFL defensive godfather, the one that everybody wanted. The Eagles wanted him. The Broncos wanted him back. Everybody wanted to get their hands on Vic Fangio when it was revealed that he was going to be looking for a new defensive coordinator job. And the Dolphins got him, and we all celebrated. And all the national media talked about how the defense was going to be rock solid now that Vic Fangio was coaching it. And yet, we have now faced 2 legitimately good NFL offenses, and both times they have absolutely torched us. And this is where my concern is, because if we're looking at the same personnel that Josh Boyer had and talked about how talented they could be if they were just in a scheme that was somewhat competent, then we have to look at Vic Fangio and say, this is the guy who was supposed to make the scheme that everybody wants to copy, and he was the one that was supposed to make it work. So it's not working, and we're trying to figure out why. Chris Kaufman put out a thread basically showing the all 22 of everything. Like, everybody looks confused. Nobody knows where they're supposed to be. Is there a lack of effort? Is there a lack of understanding? Is there just a lack of talent that we overestimated simply because Josh Boyer and constant blitzing just actually threw off quarterbacks more than we thought they did? I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm hoping that as time passes, Vic Fangio will get this thing figured out. But as of right this second, I am concerned, because if they don't fix it, these Dolphins are not competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think you have to realize too that it's a new scheme. There's a lot of new verbiage, a lot of different things going on, and there's going to be some adjustment time. And I think we all kind of expected that. We also have to remember too, thus far in the 4 games, the Dolphins have played in terms of passing yards. They've played the 5th, the 7th, the 10th, and the 12th top passing offenses. So they've run kind of a gauntlet of teams that like to throw the ball. Now, the Patriots being 12th on there kind of has to do more with the number of attempts, because they just have to pass a lot. But Russell Wilson and the Broncos, despite the outcome of that game, they're still throwing the ball very well. They beat Justin Herbert, and he's playing very well, throwing the ball very well. And then they just ran into a buzzsaw with the Buffalo Bills. So, I mean, I know we kind of get caught up with the loss and the negativity that goes along with it. And I'll be perfectly honest, I don't think that game contributed in any way to assuage the feeling that this is the same old Dolphins. But I think when you step back and kind of look at it and take a little time away from it, you'll see, well, the defense is underperforming. But you also don't have Jalen Ramsey out there, and that hurts. And you're relying on guys like Justin Bethel, who is an older player, who's more of a special teams player. Brandon Jones played for the first time pretty much all season. He had a few snaps, I think, in the previous games, but not a high volume of snaps. You didn't have one of your best pass rushers out there with Jalen Phillips. So it was just a situation where they just outplayed the Dolphins. And I think if you could go back and have everyone healthy, you might see a different outcome. But that's the way the NFL is. So, I would, it's a tough loss, but you got to move past it. And when we move on to the next couple of games, I've looked up some stats that should help kind of ease the concern about what this defense is going to face moving forward.
Well, let me go ahead and just mention real quick. My concern with the Dolphins is not going to be based on what they do against the Giants and the Panthers. The Giants and the Panthers are another two teams that I fully expect the Dolphins to absolutely wreck when they show up in Hard Rock Stadium. Just like with the Denver Broncos, my expectations for this team is that if you are a good football team, which the Dolphins seem to be, I expect them to absolutely roast them. I don't expect the Dolphins to have a close nail biter of a game against the New York Giants and the Carolina Panthers. I just don't. And if that is what we ultimately end up getting, I am going to be concerned because, again, good football teams. You saw the Kansas City Chiefs playing against the Bears? That was not fun for the Bears. It was a miserable experience. But that's what I expect. I expect a really good team with a really good quarterback to torch a team like the Chicago Bears because the Bears are a bad football team. Now with the Dolphins, they toasted the Denver Broncos in almost record-setting fashion. I expected the Dolphins to win against the Broncos. Certainly not like that. Nobody expected that. But they did exactly what I was expecting them to do. They beat up the Broncos because the Broncos are a bad football team. So now here come the New York Giants. I don't think the Giants are going to beat Miami. I'm not worried about the New York Giants. I'm not even a little bit worried about the New York Giants. And I fully expect them to win by at least 10, 15 points at minimum. Minimum. Same goes for the Panthers. Panthers are a bad football team. I expect them to win by 10, 15 points. Minimum. So that's where the expectations thing of it all comes in. Did my eyes get too big for my stomach when I set my eyes on the Buffalo Bills and saying that the Dolphins were the best team in the league? Okay, probably I did. Yes, I was looking at the Buffalo Bills. I was looking at just how proficient this Dolphins offense was, and I was under the assumption that whatever points the Bills put up on the board, Tua and the offense could figure it out. That is not the case. Liam Eichenberg at center is a terrible idea. Teron Armstead going out is a bad thing for the Dolphins, and he won't be back for quite some time, I believe. So this is one of those things where I have to acknowledge, sadly, that the Bills are still the better team in the AFC East. We still have some catching up to do because until we can go toe-to-toe with them and we don't get beat up on them like they're the school bully, I can't say that the Dolphins are the best team in the AFC East. Even if the record is better, I still have to look at the Bills and say, toe-to-toe, we don't usually match up well with them, so that makes them better. So it's a very difficult thing to acknowledge.
Well, and that goes back to, the defense having to come around. It can take a few games. And when you're facing really good offenses and really good quarterbacks, if you look at them, at least statistically, the Dolphins have played 3 of the better quarterbacks in the league this year. Again, Russell Wilson's playing very well. So, for learning a new defense and having to kind of gel like that, it's going to take some time. And so you've got some games coming up where you're going to be facing lesser offenses. And so you expect them to kind of come together a little more. And again, the games coming up are going to be get right games. If there ever was one, it's this week. The Giants are pathetic offensively. And I can run down the numbers later. I've got them all written down here, but it's they're bad. So this is a week that you say, all right, we're going to get Cam Smith in a game and let him get some snaps. This is a game that we can try out some new things and work on some of the defenses that we expect to play later on, because you're not going to have the threat of getting beat. And I think I think it just comes down to the overall matchups, and I think we're going to have to wait and see what Miami does in Week 18 when they face the Bills at home. But I'm concerned for the defense. Um, I think the secondary is a little lacking. I think Kohu's fine. He had a bad game, and Stephon Diggs does that to a lot of corners. So uh, I think he'll be fine. I don't know what's going on with Bethel. I would like to see more Cam Smith. And again, you don't really want to play Cam Smith in this game because he's going to get picked on a lot, and he would have gotten beaten worse than Kohu more than likely, just because he's not experienced. I'm not a fan necessarily of the second level. I think the linebackers are lacking. I think there's some issues there, but it's again, they ran a gauntlet of some really top passing offenses. We'll leave the Patriots kind of out of that, but the other three teams that they face have some weapons. They can throw the ball effectively. The Broncos game just got out of hand for them. They just could not stop Miami's offense, and they were moving the ball. It was what 21-10. And they were moving the ball downfield, and they got the ball back, and they turned the ball over and had like a quick turnover, and then something happened. I don't remember right offhand, but it ended up going from 21-10, which is a manageable game, to 35-13 at half, and it's over at that point. So, I want to give the defense some time. I don't expect what we see from them this week or next week, or even in the next few weeks, to be indicative of how good they are. But I think it's a good point for them to kind of say, all right, we can kind of step back now. We've weathered this initial storm of playing Justin Herbert, of playing Josh Allen. We're 3-1. Let's lick our wounds and move forward and work on some things. And I think they'll get it right by the time they start facing some really tough teams to play. And I'm going to include the Kansas City Chiefs in there, although as receiving weapons, they really don't have a lot. There's Travis Kelce, of course, and he's almost indefensible, but their outside weapons aren't scary yet. They may become that way, but as of right now, they are not. So we'll see how it goes. The next real test is going to be in 3 weeks when they face the Eagles, who have some receiving weapons. But otherwise, yeah, so we can kind of just step back now. It's over. We can move on to the Giants and should expect a big win here.
Well, I can appreciate your efforts in getting me off the cliff, so to speak. Not that I ever really felt like I was on the cliff. Again, I don't feel like that this season is in jeopardy. The Dolphins will make the playoffs one way or another. I firmly believe that. But again, the concept of being a Super Bowl contender means you have to have a good defense and a good offense. You have to have both. Any Super Bowl winning team has both. At the very least, they have a decent defense. Not a single Super Bowl winning team that I can come up with has an awful defense. Because it's not just about how many points you score. You also have to stop the other team from scoring. That was just like the concept. It was like when I had Ethan Skolnick on Fins Nation on Monday, and we talked about what it was, what went wrong. Ethan was talking about it. It was like I said, it was a tennis match. The first person who blinked, who messed up, that was it. Game over. And the Dolphins blinked first. And that was the same thing that when I did when I was on with Drew Gear of Rockpile Report, when I did the Behind Enemy Lines, he said that the best way to get Josh Allen to make mistakes is to get him to start playing hero ball and start thinking like he has to win the game all by himself. Dolphins did not do that. In fact, the Bills did exactly that to Tua. Tua started having to play hero ball, and that's when the dumb mistakes started happening. Tua started throwing passes he shouldn't have. He was just heaving it up there in hopes that somebody would come down with it that was in his color. So it was a situation where the game plan that we should have had against the Bills, they used against the Dolphins. And you see that once Tua is thrown off of his first read, I'm not going to say he's a bad quarterback because he's not. He's still very good. But in order to actually scan the field and find second, third, fourth reads if necessary, you have to be able to have an opportunity to look around. And that's where we come right back to the offensive line. You saw how long Josh Allen was back there, sitting there, just ordering a pizza, looking around, seeing who he could throw the ball to. And if he needed to, he would just run out of the pocket, and then he would find some dude just basically backyard footballing it and saying, oh, I'm just going to get away from here. And I know that Josh is going to find me because we just know how to improvise like that. Dolphins don't have that opportunity. Tua is not an alien. Josh Allen is a superhuman quarterback. He's not a real person. I still think that he's a hologram. But Josh Allen is physically gifted. Tua is, I don't want to say he's not physically gifted. He's still an athlete, but he is mentally gifted. But that doesn't help when you have 300-pound beasts bearing down on you at however many miles an hour, and you have 2 seconds to react or you're going to go down. Tua nobody can react that fast. If you're going to have your first read taken away, you have to be able to look around and find what you can find. You need more than a second and a half to do that.
Yeah, and I think that now that we've kind of seen what's going on with the offensive line, I mean, I'm less concerned with Armstead being out. I mean, we've seen, look, Khalil Mack just put up 6 sacks in a single game against the Raiders. And Kendall Lamb kept him quiet. So I think we'll be fine with Kendall Lamb. It's the interior, and we saw how valuable Connor Williams is to this team. So I will gladly take a few high snaps or off snaps or whatever he does if you can get his blocking on the field. Liam Eichenberg is not it. And I'm not going to go into that. I'm still ill over the fact that they traded up for him and didn't take Creed Humphrey, who was the player I wanted in that second round, after Javon Holland, of course. So, but again, they came out with a good game plan. They executed, and they excel there. And as far as that question is the team's not good enough. Again, this is the reason I don't get on Twitter during the games, is because it's very easy to react. And just like we can't overreact to the 70-point game against Denver, we can't react to this game against Buffalo. So remember, it wasn't that long ago that they went into Buffalo and had a lead with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. So in the playoffs. So one game does not a season make. You're muted.
Sorry, I was saying that the asterisks on that, Josh Allen's rotator cuff was thrown out.
But I mean, either way, it's still. I mean, Miami was in that game. They went up to Buffalo last year with Tua playing, and it was a 3-point ball game. So they went into Buffalo twice and lost by a grand total of 6 points last year. And this team, they're going through, again, a transition from one type of defense with different types of players to another type of defense. And there's going to be some communication breakdowns, and a team like Buffalo is going to take advantage of that. So again, I'm a tip of the cap to them. But let's look at it from this perspective also. It's the first quarter of the season. Miami's 3-1. 3 of those games were road games. So as of right now, there's 13 games left in the season. 8 of those games are home games. 4 are true road games, and 1 is a neutral site game. Miami has 3 home games against weaker opponents, the Patriots, the Giants, and the Panthers. They go on the road to face the Eagles, and then the neutral site game with the Chiefs. Worst case scenario on there, if they take care of their business at home, they're 6-3 at worst. If they can steal one of those home games, and I think that they can. I think they can compete with those teams. You can come out of the bye week 7-2. Now, if you had looked at the schedule in April or whenever it is they released it, and you said Miami's going to be 7-2 coming out of the bye week, how many fans would take that? And most everyone will say, "Yeah, I'll take it." There's probably a few fans that are like, "Well, I want to be 9-0," and who doesn't? But I mean, you're 7-2, and then you go into a stretch of games 6-3, 7-2. you go into a stretch of games where you face the Raiders, the Titans, a weaker Jets team now, twice, and then you get the Commanders. So those are all 5 winnable games. If you come out of the bye, say for example 7-2, and you win those 5 ball games before you face Dallas, Baltimore, and then Buffalo again. So that's 12-2 going into that last stretch of games. I mean, who's not taking that? And that's not to say it's a foregone conclusion, but the toughest stretch of the Dolphins season was at the very beginning and at the very end. And so they weathered this first storm. And yeah, it's a tough loss, and the score looks all wonky. But remember, you're 3-1. You've got a very, very, very good chance to go 6-1 going into a tough non-conference game on the road. So yeah, I'll take 6-1. I don't care what that loss looks like, and I will again. And I was on the show last week where it said, why are we hesitant to celebrate?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because hey, we're not crowning ourselves just yet.
I crowned him, and that was my mistake.
But at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and say, the season's over now because of this loss. So, just again, lick your wounds and move on from it. I think they will be fine. The defense will get it ironed out, and if anything, they needed a wake up call. They know they're not good enough right now, and they can work on some things. And this is good. This is good tape to learn these things. Hey, what were you doing over here? You're supposed to be in this position. You learn this stuff. You work these things out. And, it is what it is. So, again, I am fine with it. Of all the, and I didn't get to watch the second half of the game. I had some family in town, so I had to go deal with that. That's why I wasn't at the post-game show. So, but, most of the time after a loss like that, I'm usually down in the dumps until like Friday. And I was okay yesterday. And I think it's just because I've developed a perspective, it's one game, it's in their building. And again, they win in their building against Miami. But they lost on the road last year to Miami. So we get them in our building. If it happens again, okay. But I don't think it's going to happen again in our building. And our team, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then. Their secondary's hurt now. Tre'Davious White tore his Achilles in this game, which is sad for him. He's a good player. He come back from a knee injury last year. So it's tough to see that. You don't want to see anybody get hurt, even if it is an opponent, a division rival. But I mean, who knows what it's going to be like week 18. Hopefully Miami will be closer to full strength. Armstead, Coach McDaniel said should be back and play again this season. He's not on IR yet, if he's going to go on IR. And Miami has some youth at these positions. Miami can get Nick Needham back in the next few weeks. So there's help on the way. Again, I'm going to be positive about it because, again, it's just one game. And as negative as we were about a 70-point game historically, I'm not going to be that negative about this loss.
All right.
Now we come out and lose to the Giants. Yeah, you can color me panicked at that point.
Yeah, listen, Duke. If the Dolphins lose to the Giants, then at this point, I'm saying
okay, barring a meteor falling on the place or something. I mean, if everybody gets
hurt, meteor falling on Tua.
Yeah. I mean, and that's again another positive thing to take from this game. He was sacked 4 times.
I saw him doing his jiu-jitsu. I saw him bracing himself with his arms.
To a jiu-jitsu. And I don't remember who it was who tweeted this, so I apologize. But it's like we can't expect Tua to get concussed every time he gets hit. And I'm not going to lie. Every time he drops back to throw and somebody gets within 3 yards of him, you kind of go, and I got to stop. It's got to stop. So I am not concerned about the Giants at this point. Getting to him. They have 4 sacks on the season. That's 1 a game. That's next to last in the league. So that's not going to be a concern this week. However, yeah, that's another positive. He keeps getting up. He can stay healthy. Can't say the same for Teron Armstead, unfortunately, but my boy Kendall Lamb's gonna hold it down on that side. So
You're Appalachian State guy. Weren't you wearing the shirt?
Appalachian
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Mountaineer. That is a point of contention among Appalachian State fans. Is it's Appalachian.
I did not realize. I'm not a college guy, so I don't know anything about this.
It's weird. The region is often referred to as Appalachia, which is acceptable, but it's not Appalachian State. And when they say that on TV,
you just feel like something die inside you.
Yeah, it's like when somebody says Tua Tagovailoa, and you're like, can you not say his name right? Even Roger Goodell couldn't do it. He had all those months pre-draft, and he still couldn't say it right.
Okay, well, let's be fair. We've been saying Devon Achon's name wrong all this time. So
he just.
I feel like he
people.
keeps changing it. He's like he's.
Well,
you feel like he's changing it in the fly. It's like no, actually it's Achon. No, actually it's Achon. Like
he well, he's like one of those. I didn't want to correct people, so I kind of get that. But now listen, I was a fan of his pre-draft prior to the combine. And I didn't watch a whole lot of tape, but I knew what he was about. I knew he had track speed. Then the combine happens. Of course, he runs like 4.31 or something ridiculous. And then he weighed in under 190, and that's not a good number for running backs. And he said he now that he's not running track, he bulked up a little bit. And you don't want him to bulk up and get slower, which could happen. But man, is that kid something else or what? Averaging, he's like a Madden running back. He gets these ridiculous yards per attempt numbers. He's the highest graded running back on Pro Football Focus. That guy, I don't care what you say, he's a positive for this team all the way around. And they got him at pick 84.
Third rounder.
That's awesome.
So speaking of Devon Achon, let's go ahead and get into the Giants game. You had all these numbers prepped, and I'm going to go ahead and let you do that in a moment, but I want to give my thoughts real quick. Once again, Dolphins should handily handle the New York Giants. It should not be close. I expect, again, at least a double-digit victory when it comes to this. They're going to be at home. They're in Hard Rock. The Giants can't do anything. Daniel Jones is bad. I don't care what anybody says. It's worse than, like, people thought that it wasn't worth it to pay Ryan Tannehill when he got extended by the Dolphins. They just extended Daniel Jones. And I would still take Ryan Tannehill over Daniel Jones. I really, really would. I truly would. Because for everything that Daniel Jones has done for the Giants, Tannehill did more for Miami. And that's not saying a whole lot in hindsight. And as for Saquon Barkley, I think there are reports that Barkley might not be available. He's a little banged up. So if they don't even have that much, the Giants should not score anything. They should have a big fat 0, because what do they have to work with at that point? Now, I'm not expecting a 0. I don't care how many people go out. The Giants will score something. But the way that I look at this, like you mentioned, Duke, this is a get-right game. This is an opportunity for them to get themselves back in working order. It's interesting that Tua basically implied that they needed this loss as if it was to get them back down to earth, like they were getting too big for their britches or something, and they knew it. I hate to think that way, because I would like to think that the team has enough discipline to not let themselves get up over their skis on this. But maybe this happens to a lot of teams. Like, they come off of a massive win and they just, like, they're all emotionally and physically drained out of the whole thing. I don't know how that works. I was never in a football setting. I played basketball. I played baseball as a kid, but never football. So it's a completely different environment. I get it. But just thinking of the whole idea of they needed a humbling to get themselves back in order. I don't know. But either way, these Giants should not be a concern.
Well, think about it from this perspective too. It wasn't just a big win; it was a historic win. Had they won that game 42-20, it's not that big of a deal. So I think it just kind of compounded on itself because everyone was talking about it. It was historic. I saw Raheem Mostert on the Rich Eisen show, and they were talking about it. Again, if it was 42-14 or some kind of score like that. It's nobody. Not to say that changes the outcome of the Bills game, but they don't need humbling after a game like that. Does that make sense? You win. You put up 70 points. Exactly. You put up 70 points against the team. You put up the most yards in a game since the 50s, early 50s. So what, nearly 70 years ago that this happened. It's going to happen. They heard about it, and I don't care what players say. They don't. It's the way that social media and stuff is, the internet. It's just you are way too connected these days to not hear that stuff, and it's easy to kind of toot your own horn. Yeah, we scored 70 points, and then you go up to Buffalo and they slap you around. So yeah, you need to work on it, and so that's my 2 cents on why they needed humbling. It's just because it was the type of win that it was. Had it been a smaller margin of victory, they don't get as much hype.
Fair enough. Now, what's all these numbers that you had for the Giants? Like, I don't think a whole lot of us were concerned, but give us a reason to be excited again, Duke.
Well, again, it goes back to Miami has 2 get-right games coming up. So let's just run through these real quick. The Giants are 31st in yards. They have less than half of Miami's yards thus far. Carolina is 25th with 1,130 yards. So you can add up both of those teams' total yards, and they're slightly over Miami offensively. Yards per play, the Giants are tied with the Bengals at 4 yards per play. The Carolina's 30th at 4.2. The Giants have scored 46 total points on the season. That's 32nd. The Carolina Panthers have scored 67. That's 24th. As part of that, the Giants are averaging 11.5 points a game, and Carolina 16.8 points a game. So combined, they are nearly 10 points less than Miami per game. The Giants scored 31 points against the Cardinals, the tanking Cardinals, tank for Caleb. They've averaged 5 points a game in the other 3 games against the Cowboys, the 49ers, and Seattle.
Well, the Cowboys and the 49ers are legitimately good football teams. So,
well, I mean, but they played teams that were contending teams, and they averaged 5 points a game. That's actually in they didn't score against the Cowboys. They scored 3 points last night and 12 points against the 49ers. Go figure that. Passing yards, Giants are 30th at 632. Carolina's 23rd, 749. Completion percentage, Giants are 11th, 68.7. Carolina's 21st, 62.7. Yards per attempt, Giants are 58th at 5.8. Carolina's 31st, 5.4. Rushing yards, Giants, 376 total rushing yards. That's 23rd. Carolina's just ahead of them at 381. They're both tied at 19th in yards per attempt at 4.0. In terms of scoring percentage, the Giants are dead last at 20.5%. Carolina's 29.5%. This is the number of drives that end in a score. Turnover percentage, this is number of drives that end in a turnover. Giants are 28th at 18.2. Carolina is 18th at 11.4. So to put that into perspective, the Giants are almost equally as likely to turn the ball over a drive as they are to score a point or a touchdown on a drive. Points per drive, Giants are 30th at 1.07. Carolina's 26th at 1.34. That is nearly 1 full point combined below Miami's points per drive. And we went over Daniel Jones, and I've got his numbers if you want to hear them, but they are, aside from his completion percentage, most of them are bottom tier. I didn't look at Bryce Young. He's a rookie, so there's got that going for him. Jones and Young together average 359 yards per game. Tua is at 326.5. So just, what is that? Less than 30, right at 30 yards a game difference combined. So again, I was looking at, just because I'm a stat nerd, and I was looking up these numbers today. If there's ever a game for your defense to kind of work on it and kind of whittle back down some of those numbers to average and even things out, the next 2 weeks are it. I agree with you. I don't expect a lot of scoring from either one of these teams in this game.
And when you say either, you're talking about the
I
Panthers
mean
and
both.
the Panthers and the Giants.
No, from them. I don't expect much from either one of those teams.
You expect Miami not to
I'm
score?
I'm not talking about the Dolphins.
Okay. That's what I was saying, is that you meant
No.
the
If
Giants and the
the
Panthers.
Dolphins don't score, it's because it's the mercy rule or everybody's hurt. This should be. I mean, the line on this game after last night went from what is it, plus 9.5 or whatever that number is to 11. So the Giants somehow went down, meaning nobody's betting on the Giants. So I asked another chat I was in today, what would the number have to be, knowing what you know about these two teams, for you to legitimately bet the Giants? And I got anywhere from 17 to 22. So yeah, that's kind of that's what fans are kind of expecting from this. So for you to bet to say the Giants are going to cover the spread, it would have to be, they said, have to be in the neighborhood of basically a 3-score game.
Okay.
And that's what we're expecting. And you look at these numbers offensively from the Giants, they're bad. They're very bad. Daniel Jones is next to last in sack percentage, and I grant that he had 10 last night against the Seahawks, which is ridiculous. But still, only one other quarterback in the league has taken more sacks per drop back than him, and that's Sam Howell. So, look, the Dolphins better get some interceptions this week. They better get some fumbles. They better get some sacks. And if they don't get those things, they better pitch a shutout. So, having said all that fun, cheery stuff about the defense that I said earlier about let's put this game behind us, the next 2 weeks better be when you show out. Now, and I'm not talking about garbage time. Like if it's fourth quarter and you're up 35-0 and they score 14 points late when nobody's trying, that doesn't count. You got to legitimately hold these teams to nothing when it counts.
I agree. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready to call it here. I smell food in the room, so I'm hungry. So let's go ahead and we'll get ready to call it a little bit short here, but let's do our zero and hero, and let's do our score predictions here. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and start first. My zero for this Giants game, I'm just going to go ahead and say Jerome Baker again. There's just something about him this year. Like, he's the quarterback of the defense, and I respect it. I do. But as far as what his actual performance is, he's done almost nothing. Like, he has done absolutely nothing for me to feel like he's worth keeping around beyond after this season. I feel like he's almost guaranteed at this point to be a cap casualty, if not maybe some kind of trade bait to try to get some more draft picks out of him. Maybe we get like a 5th or a 6th rounder from some linebacker starved team somewhere at this point. But with Jerome Baker, I'm just not. It's the linebackers in general. Like, David Long Jr. is doing better than Jerome Baker, but that's not saying a whole lot right now. As far as my hero, I'm going to be looking for Tua to legitimately. I know it's kind of cheating to pick the quarterback, but I need to see Tua light up the Giants. Absolutely torch them. I need to see that even with Kendall Lamb at left tackle and assuming Liam Eichenberg continues to play center, I need to see Tua find ways to maybe improvise, maybe find some ways to find some guys open, to be able to, because it's not always going to be perfect, right? The best quarterbacks in the NFL find ways to make plays, even if they're running around and trying to escape. So I want to see Tua do something crazy. I want to see him go wild. That's what I want Tua to see. That's what I want Tua to do. As far as the score, there's not going to be a shutout. As much as I would love it to be a shutout, it's not going to be a shutout. So, but as far as what the score is, I'm going to go ahead and say the Dolphins win 35-14 because, again, these Giants are bad. They are very, very, very bad. And I do not have any concern about the Dolphins losing to the Giants. If they do, you're going to be a very angry Lewis on the next few episodes of Pulse of Fins Nation.
Well, I'm going to have 2 zeros in this game. One is contingent upon playing time. If Liam Eichenberg plays in this game and it's not garbage time, he's the 0. I'm done. if Connor Williams plays and he starts, 0. I'm going to go with a guy who I expect to have good numbers, but it's a 0 because I think he's going to lose playing time, and that's Raheem Mostert. And not because he's doing bad. He had a bad game, whatever. I think he's just losing. He's just going to lose.
Devon Achon.
Yeah, Achan's going to be that guy. As Waddle said, he's one of them ones, and he's proven it. So he's earning touches away from Raheem Mostert. So that's why I'm going to put him as 0. I don't really expect to be a whole lot of necessarily negative things from this game in terms of that. I think it's going to be, I don't want to say an easy game, but this is a game that the Dolphins offense should do what they do, and the defense should get right. As far as hero, you took Tua. I was going to say Tua. But I'm going to go with 2 on defense. I'm going to say Andrew Van Ginkel. I think he's going to make his presence felt again. And I'm going to go with Cater Kohu. I think he has a bounce back game. He needs it, and I think he'll get a pick this game. Score prediction, I was going to say 35-10. And I think the 10 come in the fourth quarter when Miami's got the starters out.
Well, I'll give you this about Cater Kohu. As far as what the Giants have on offense, Paris Campbell, Isaiah Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slayton. None of those names are necessarily jumping off the page for me and saying, wow, that's dangerous. The only one I could really look at and say, okay, maybe this guy, because he's had some history beating Miami, would be Darren Waller as a tight end, but I don't think Cater Kohu's going to have to worry about that. So
Kohu won't be covering Waller. The guy that would present a potential problem is Jalen Hyatt. He's a rookie, but he's a fast guy. So it depends, but he hasn't been getting a lot of playing time. They said that last night on the. I was watching the Manning cast before I fell asleep. I'm old.
Well, Peyton's not the most exciting voice to hear.
Well, but yeah. But I think I can't remember who it was. It may have been Will Ferrell. It could have been Eli. I don't remember. But they said, one of them said, "Why are they not playing this guy? They drafted him high. Why not play him?" So yeah, I think with the potential that Andrew Thomas is also out. I read today that he's day to day. We'll see. That's Bradley Chubb's side. We need to see more from him, but their offensive line is abysmal. It's as bad as like 2019 Dolphins offensive line. So this is the defense needs to go into this game angry about the last game. They're hearing everybody talk about how terrible they are, and they need to go in and just mop the floor. I want to see at least 5 sacks total, at least 2 turnovers. 2 turnovers. Javon Holland needs to break out and get some turnovers. He's forced some fumbles. He needs a couple of picks. But yeah, 35-10, and the 10 comes in the fourth quarter when game's out of hand.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. Sorry it's a little bit shorter, but with stuff going on, got stuff to do, not to mention. Once again, well wishes for Ron, please. He's not feeling well right now, so hope maybe he's watching and maybe he's just maybe he can feel your energy from way out there. So everybody, send him some well wishes. Duke, I want to thank you for coming on and doing this show with me. Thank you for your numbers. I was never really concerned about the Giants per se, but that whole stuff about any given Sunday and whatever. But no, I fully expect the Dolphins to absolutely beat down the Giants.
It's one of those things where you're like, well, the team's playing poorly. How bad can it be? Well, it's bad.
Ask Denver how bad it was.
And Denver's not. I mean, they're playing okay. They won a game. They
beat the Bears, Duke. That doesn't mean nothing.
They beat the Bears.
Nothing.
Yeah, but that was coming off the game they just came off of. So, I mean, they're struggling, but they got that going for them. And their passing game's doing all right. Russell Wilson's playing decent ball. It's not like Super Bowl winning Russell Wilson ball or MVP type season Russell Wilson ball, but it's decent ball. So Daniel Jones is not. And then you get Bryce Young, who is, or at worst, Andy Dalton the week after that. So, and it's home games. It's going to be 1,000 degrees in the stadium. The Giants have dark blue jerseys. Carolina will have like a medium blue type jersey. I doubt they're going to wear their black jerseys down there. So Yeah, I expect maybe less than 30 points total from both of these teams combined.
All righty. Well, let's go ahead and call it here. Everybody, once again, thank you all for joining us. If you haven't already done so, make sure you head on over to prizepicks.com, use that promo code 5, that's FIVE, and then we'll match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. And believe me, folks, when Flex Friday rolls around, that's when it's my favorite time of the game. All right. That's going to be it. See you all next week for another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation, where hopefully we'll all be happy again. Good night, everybody.